Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Overnight snowfall blanketed much of South Korea, disrupting the morning commute. Transit services were expanded across the Seoul metropolitan area after over 7 centimeters of snow fell in the region. Trade Minister Yo Han-gu held a series of meetings with U.S. officials over the weekend in Washington to address trade concerns. He said he focused on explaining South Korea's legislative process to dispel misunderstandings over delays in passing a special law tied to investment commitments in key U.S. industries. The hit song Golden from the Netflix animated film K-pop Demon Hunters has become the first ever K-pop song to win a Grammy Award. The track won Best Song for Visual Media, securing one of its 4 nominations this year. We begin this morning with overnight snowfall that has tapered off across much of South Korea, disrupting the morning commute. Public transit services in the capital area were expanded, with many opting for subways and buses instead of driving. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Overnight snowfall across the country has now largely subsided, with most major roads cleared and traffic moving normally in many areas this morning. Up to 7.3 centimeters of snow fell overnight in Seoul. Yeoncheon in Gyeonggi-do Province saw 7.6 centimeters, while Charwon in Gangwon-do Province received the heaviest accumulation at 17.3 centimeters. In anticipation of the snow, the Ministry of the Interior and Safety activated a Level 1 alert at the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters at 10 p.m. Sunday and began emergency response measures. The Seoul Metropolitan Government also raised its snow response to Level 2, deploying around 1,200 pieces of equipment and 8,000 personnel to clear roads and spread de-icing agents. As of early Monday morning, heavy snow advisories for Seoul and much of the metropolitan area have been lifted. However, advisories remain in place for southern regions where authorities are urging continued caution. With the overnight snowfall, transit services were expanded due to a heavier than usual demand for public transportation. Peak rush hour operations on subway lines 2 and 5 through 8 were extended until 9:30 a.m., with 20 additional trains added. City buses also extended their peak schedule services from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and maintained shorter intervals through 9:30 a.m. Korail increased its service with 13 additional trains across 5 lines, including Line 1, the Suin-Bundang Line, and the Gyeonggi-Jungang Line. Officials warned that snow during the early commute could still cause traffic congestion or stranded vehicles in southern regions and are urging drivers to remain cautious. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's trade minister continued talks in the United States over President Donald Trump's plan to increase tariffs on automobiles and other key exports to the U.S. The minister has emphasized to stakeholders that a delay in passing a bill on South Korean investment in the U.S. is not a lack of commitment. Our An Sung-jin has the details.
South Korea's Trade Minister Yo Han-gu has been holding a series of meetings with U.S. officials and lawmakers in Washington since Friday. Seoul intensified efforts to avert a threatened tariff hike on automobiles and other key exports to the U.S.
I'm focusing on important stakeholders, including the USTR and the Congress.
His talks are primarily centered on explaining South Korea's legislative process to dispel misunderstandings over delays in passing a special law tied to Seoul's large-scale investment commitments in key U.S. industries, worth up to $350 billion over the long term, agreed last year. He emphasized that the delay should not be misconstrued as a lack of commitment by the Korean government, and added that the ruling Democratic Party has set a target to pass the bill on the implementation of investment commitments by late February or early March.
Ultimately, the U.S. also wants to do business with Korea, so we'll do our best on prioritizing national interest.
Yo had taken over from Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwan, who was dispatched to the U.S. for talks with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Kim returned home without reaching a conclusive agreement. The high-level talks follow U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to raise tariffs on South Korean automobiles and imposed reciprocal tariffs, lifting rates from 15% to 25%. Trump cited delays in South Korea's National Assembly as grounds for the move.
We moved down to 15% for Korea as a show of good faith. They have not executed their part. They haven't been able to get a bill through to do the investment.
The U.S. administration has reportedly begun preparations for the potential 25% tariff, including procedures required for publication in the Federal Register, though the measure has not yet been officially announced. Yo is scheduled to continue talks in Washington through early this week. All eyes are on now whether Seoul and Washington can bridge the differences and prevent an escalation in trade tensions. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
With renewed pressure from the United States on South Korea over a plan to raise tariffs, the Korean government has been forming a coordinated response to address this issue. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Oh Jun-seok, Dean at the College of Economic and Business at Sookmyung Women's University. Professor, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So the industry minister said unnecessary misunderstandings have been resolved through tariff talks with the U.S., but trade concerns still remain, right? How do you think this issue will play out?
Mr. Kim was hurriedly dispatched to Washington, D.C., and then he said on the possibility of a U.S. tariff hike. Tariff increase measures have already begun, and they are preparing for publication in the official gazette and preparing sanctions. Regarding the outline of the first investment project in the United States, it said it is necessary for the act to pass as quickly as possible, and the government will work toward that. I agree with him, except for the diplomatic expression has been reserved. The perceived gap of implementation speed comes basically from the different legislation processes between the two countries. Statutory law system like Korea, public body cannot do without rulemaking. On the other hand, case law country like the United States, ruling by doing, the revision and application processes seems easier and faster. This is the big difference between rule-making first principle versus doing first principle. I don't think Korean Assembly has been dragging its feet. However, it is also true. People on the U.S. side might misunderstand unnecessarily under speculation that the Online Platform Fairness Act or so-called Kupang issues as a new challenge may have interpreted as a intentional delay. Japan and Korea had both agreed, separate but somewhat similar trade framework deal with Washington last July, which have a similar legislative process system. But Tokyo has implemented the agreement more quickly without new issues. It might be undesirable to be exposed to the risk of increasing tariff by Trump administration. Politicians must know better. Continuing a new issue interpreted as correcting the sincerity of promise would be a trigger to escalate into sudden trade conflicts.
Right, and if auto and reciprocal tariffs are raised from 15% to 25%, as President Trump suggests, what kind of impact could this have on Korean companies, especially automakers?
It might be a deep impact. Trump's remarks are part of a broader pattern of pressuring allies through trade threat. In recent weeks, Trump has warned Canada that tariff could rise to 100% if it signs agreement with China, and has raised the prospect of asserting control over Greenland while floating tariff threat toward Europe. It remains unknown exactly when Trump planned to have the increased tariff go into effect. Trump's tariff announcement on Korea, if enforced, could inject new uncertainty into the bilateral relationship. Cars and auto parts are cornerstone of the Korean economy, accounting for about 15% of total exports. Trump's move for the tariff increase apparently puts pressure on Korea to accelerate effort to meet its end of the trade deal, particularly on the investment front. Seoul is expected to make an investment with annual cap of $20 billion in the U.S. This year, in line with the trade deal. But speculation has risen that the Korean currency weakness against the U.S. dollar could get in the way delivering on an investment commitment. When a 25% tariff were applied last year, top automakers, Hyundai Motors and Kia, saw their combined quarterly operating profit fall by about 2 trillion won, equivalent to 1.38 billion US dollar. Analysts estimate that a 10% point increase in tariff would add about 3.1 trillion won in cost for Hyundai Motors and 2.2 trillion won for Kia. It is expected when the tariff hike is finalized, operating profit in 2026 could fall by 21 to 23%. Auto parts suppliers, including Hyundai Mobis, even though somewhat insulated by U.S. operations, but remain vulnerable consecutively.
I see. And even with these tariff concerns, South Korea's exports topped 65 billion US dollars in January for the first time, largely led by semiconductors. Do you think this momentum can continue? What's your outlook for exports for the rest of the year?
Yes, I think this momentum could go on for the time being in the face of fluctuating tariff uncertainty. Korea's exports exceed 60 billion US dollar for the first time in January, continuing their growth trajectory. By product category, 13 out of 15 major export items posted gain. Semiconductor exports surged 102.7% year on year to 20.54 billion US dollar, supported by artificial intelligence demand and rising memory chip prices. Of course, there remains dark side. Steel industry, 9% down. Petrochemicals and petroleum products were also affected by factors such as a global supply oversupply and falling oil prices. However, another key export item, automobile, also shows a 1.7% increase from the previous year to 72 billion US dollars, setting a new record high. For automobiles, export to the U.S. decreased by 13.5% due to tariff imposed by the Trump administration. However, increasing export to the European Union and the CIS region, particularly in eco-friendly and used cars, overall export remained positive. In addition, a new momentum of growth export of biohealth, chips, computers, and wireless communication devices also increased compared to the previous years, with 6 out of top 15 export items recording positive growth.
I see. And with the AI and semiconductor boom, Korean stocks are on a strong rally. How long do you expect this trend to continue?
It is true. Pivoting into the age of AI, the memory semiconductor industry is emerging as the biggest beneficiary. With AI and physical AI demand continuing to grow, the future of suppliers looks bright, definitely. Thus, the stock market is likely to hold its upward trend and continued semiconductor momentum. Foreign investors are snapping up tech and auto shares in the stock market, possibly becoming net buyers of months after turning to net selling. In the industry sector, car makers have also come under the spotlight as the trade deal reaches between Seoul and Washington eased the tariff uncertainties waning on the sector. When it comes to memory semiconductor, Korea cannot be overlooked. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix lead a strong rally of the Kospi recently. SK Hynix was their top pick, purchasing a net 824.7 billion won. Foreigners are also purchased 426.1 billion won worth of preferred share of Samsung Electronics and 322.1 billion won worth of share of Hyundai Motors. The Trump administration recently threatened to increase tariff rates on Korean semiconductor to 100%. Samsung is expanding investment in Texas, and SK Hynix is pouring massive funds into Indiana as a way of risk insulation. However, U.S. big tech are not affordable to create AI without Korean technology. Considering the fact memory semiconductor prices have skyrocketed amid the AI boom, then the absolute dominance of K-memory semiconductor amid the supply crisis will not change even with tariff holding this trajectory upward afterward.
I see. All right, Professor Oh, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The hit song Golden from the animated film K-pop Demon Hunters has become the first ever K-pop Grammy winner. The chart-topping track won Best Song for Visual Media at the Grammy Awards on Sunday local time, securing one of its 4 nominations this year. Blackpink's Rosé received 3 nominations for APT, her collaboration with Bruno Mars, including Song of the Year, Record of the Year, and Best Pop Duo or Group Performance. BTS, despite earning 5 Grammy nominations over their career, has yet to win the award. As Seoul City aims to become a global leader in physical AI, the city laid out its vision for how the latest technologies could reshape urban systems, infrastructure, and industries at its annual Artificial Intelligence Forum. Our Cho Young-eun was there.
Under the theme The Transformation Era Beyond Adoption, AI Seoul 2026 highlighted tangible changes driven by artificial intelligence in city operations and industrial innovation. Sharing its vision to become a global leader in physical AI, Seoul unveiled a comprehensive citywide strategy spanning infrastructure, industrial development, and everyday applications.
Technology must ultimately serve people. And the physical AI leading city that Seoul envisions is a city that creates the warmest change with the coldest technology.
Global CEOs and academic leaders led insight sessions, offering perspectives on how AI is shaping Seoul's future, as the city announced plans to establish a Seoul Physical AI Belt, linking Yangjae AI Tech City for AI talent and companies with the Susa robot cluster. By 2030, a central facility will be completed to enable testing and demonstrations of autonomous robots and advanced AI technologies. In line with this vision, Seoul plans to transform downtown areas into large-scale physical AI testbed and invest 100 billion won, or about $70 million by 2030. Among the keynote speakers was Carlo Lotti, director of the MIT Sensible City Lab, who underscores Seoul's potential to emerge as a global hub for AI-powered urban innovation.
Every time I come here, I'm amazed about all the excitement about here people have at AI, how much the city is investing in this. And because of this, I think Seoul can really be an ideal testbed for really testing new technologies and urban futures.
The conference also showcased the outcomes of Seoul's AI transition efforts over the past year, building on the roadmap set out at last year's forum. As Seoul builds smarter infrastructure, some of the innovations seen at this event, from autonomous buses to fire patrol robots, could become part of everyday life over the next decade. Cho Young-eun, Arirang News.
It's been about a year since Korean temple food was designated a national intangible cultural heritage. And since then, the rising popularity has been drawing attention from audiences around the globe. Our culture correspondent Park Gun-woo takes a closer look at this trend.
Long preserved for centuries, Korean temple food is no longer enjoyed only by monks, but by food lovers from around the world. This growing interest can be partially seen at a temple cuisine restaurant in Seoul, operated by the Choge Order of Korean Buddhism, where reservations are often fully booked, including by visitors from abroad.
Today, it's a little bit similar to Japanese traditional food. It tastes more some taste of kimchi. This a little bit spicy food, but it was very delicious. And yeah, I love this delicate taste of this temple food.
Temple cuisine is also drawing strong interest from visitors outside of Asia.
What I think about is that everything is made with a lot of consciousness. I think the idea of food and also of the connection to the rest of the world, that everything is connected. Yeah. But this temple food was first time, but we will take it with us, of course, this idea, and we'll look for any opportunity also in Germany.
So it may seem like a lot of food and slightly different from what monks would normally eat in a single meal. But what we have here is a wide variety of traditional temple dishes. And one standout feature is that they don't use pungent vegetables, including garlic and green onions, nor do they use artificial seasonings. So let's give it a try. A wide variety of temple food includes whitewater kimchi, believed to aid digestion, winter spinach with sweet persimmon, crispy glazed mushrooms that surprisingly taste like meat, and buckwheat jelly with spicy kimchi. Bite after bite, slurp after slurp, diners keep tasting, some even lifting their bowls to finish every last drop. Thanks to its global popularity, temple food is also attracting more visitors from abroad, many traveling to Korea just to learn more about it. Building on this momentum, the Cultural Corps of Korean Buddhism is preparing to sign collaborative agreements to introduce temple food at prestigious culinary schools overseas, including the Culinary Institute of America.
Temple food is becoming so important because people recognize simplicity and the power of it. In a world full of industrial, Western, processed food, we want a healthy body and a healthy spirit with a healthy community, so that we can co-create a healthy world. And I would hope that all types of cuisines and culinary schools work towards that objective.
The Cultural Corps of Korean Buddhism even says reservations for temple food making classes are often fully booked weeks in advance. At the same time, the Choge Order of Korean Buddhism is pushing to have temple food listed as UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. With tradition, philosophy, and growing global interest coming together, Korean temple food is now stepping onto the world stage. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Iran's top leadership has warned that a U.S. attack would ignite a full-scale regional conflict. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei told state media on Sunday that Iran will not be intimidated by U.S. naval deployments and vowed a strong blow against anyone who attacks Iran. This warning comes as the United States has increased its naval presence in the Middle East after President Donald Trump repeatedly threatened intervention unless Iran agrees to a nuclear deal and stops killing protesters. Meanwhile, Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf said Iran will designate EU armies as, quote, terrorist groups after the European Union labeled Iran's Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization last week. He also said authorities will consider expelling EU military attachés. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson expects to end the partial government shutdown by Tuesday. The Speaker on Sunday expressed confidence that he has the Republican votes to restore funding for most federal agencies once lawmakers return to Washington. The U.S. entered what is expected to be a brief shutdown on Saturday after Congress failed to approve a funding deal as it was out of session by the time the Senate passed the spending package on Friday. Johnson said the House aims to fund all agencies except the Department of Homeland Security by Tuesday. Democrats on Sunday demanded immediate reforms for ICE following 2 fatal shootings of U.S. citizens in Minneapolis. Speaker Johnson promised 2 weeks of, quote, good faith negotiations on immigration enforcement once the rest of the government reopens. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the former Prince Andrew must testify before a U.S. congressional committee after newly released files detailed more ties to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Newly released U.S. Justice Department files on Friday revealed emails showing Andrew maintained regular contact with Epstein for more than 2 years after Epstein's child sex crimes conviction. The files also include photos that appear to show Andrew crouching over and touching the waist of a woman lying on the floor with her face blacked out. Separately, the BBC cited a U.S. lawyer saying a woman alleged Epstein sent her to Britain for a sexual encounter with Andrew in 2010 at the Windsor Castle estate. Andrew denies all wrongdoing. Pope Leo XIV is calling for a global, quote, Olympic truce as the 2026 Winter Games prepares to open in Italy later this week. The Pope referred on Sunday to an ancient custom when states would lay their arms before and during the Games. He urged all nations currently in conflict to lay down their arms and seek dialogue, describing the upcoming Games as a message of fraternity and hope for a peaceful world. He specifically asked those in positions of authority to make concrete gestures to ease tensions. The Winter Olympics begin this Friday.
There has been a winter storm overnight across Seoul and other central regions. Most of the capital area saw over 5 centimeters per hour at the peak, creating chaos for the morning commuters. And heavy snow is forecast to continue in Gangwon-do and some of the southern regions, with Jeollado could possibly see up to 8 centimeters of snowfall. So please use extra caution out on the roads. Meanwhile, the dryness in the eastern regions is getting worse, with severe dryness continuing since January. Concerns are rising about drought and large-scale wildfires, so fire safety is a must. The peak of this season's harsh cold wave has passed, and this afternoon we could see a high of 1 degree Celsius here in the capital and Chuncheon, Daegu, Gyeongju, Gwangju topping out at 4 degrees Celsius. And this week we expect no severe cold with temperatures gradually rising, but there could be a big drop in readings again on Friday, staying freezing through the weekend.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.